Thank you very much, Sarah, and I guess you can hear me. You can hold your ears if it gets too loud. And thanks to everybody at Crystal Bridges who has made me feel very welcome, and I'm certainly honored to be part of the state-of-the-art exhibition. And I thank you all especially for coming this afternoon, and hope that you will find this interesting, and hope you'll feel free if you want to ask questions as I'm going along. It's a lot more interesting for everybody if it's a conversation rather than me just standing up here talking. Without too much further ado, we will get into the show, and I've got a lot of video to share with you as well as stills. And what I plan to do is show you several videos, but the main one will be a biographical video that was produced by the Halsey Institute in Charleston, South Carolina. I had a show there last winter, and they are a really extraordinary venue in our region. Charleston is such a beautiful and interesting city, and the curator, Mark Sloan, is in charge of the Halsey Institute, and I feel very fortunate to have gotten on his radar and been the recipient of a really nice video that they made visiting my studio in North Carolina. Then I'm going to show you some older works, a few greatest hits, and some of you may recognize some of the sculptures that are in that. Then we will move on to a more recent show that I had in Richmond that just closed on Halloween Day, appropriately enough. And then I will show you, as part of that work, I'll show you a video that I just received from the editors there. And then I will discuss some of the work in the show in Richmond. Then we will have a few slides concerning my process, how I make things. And then we will conclude at the end with a video made by my son and me. It's called The Upper Hand. And you will see why. And then that will be the end. And like I say, I'm happy to answer questions at the end of all this, or if you want to ask questions as we're going along, that'll be fine too. I think I will just kind of stand to the side, and I guess we will go. So as you can see here, the sculptures in this presentation are products of the artist's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons or actual situations is coincidental, and I want to assure you that it is completely unintentional on my part. In keeping with that, I would like to read you a poem by Wisława Szymborska, who is a very famous Polish poet who received the Nobel Prize. She died a couple of years ago, but this poem is called In Praise of Self-Deprecation. The buzzard has nothing to fault himself with. Scruples are alien to the Black Panther. Piranhas do not doubt the rightness of their actions. The rattlesnake approves of himself without reservations. The self-critical jackal does not exist. The locust, the alligator, the trichina, the horsefly, they live their lives as they live, and they are glad of it. The killer whale's heart weighs 100 kilos, but in other respects, it is light. There is nothing more animal-like than a clear conscience on the third planet from the sun. We've all got our politics, but art operates on a more basic level than politics. It's got to draw us in. It's got to have a good story, a haunting scene, or be a fascinating object. While we're under the spell of art, we are under its hypnotic spell. It allows us to consider the world from many different points of view. some of which may be new to us. Already? Yes. I wanted it, I think I've got this right now. If it's backwards, forgive me. I wanted you to see him from this side so that you would see him line up with you and appear to be doing his smarmy thing, and then you would see that it was hollow and that there wasn't much behind all of that. And the speed was intentional too, even though that turntable is really meant to turn motorcycles at a car show. But I thought it was the appropriate speed of, and it's not anybody in particular, but it was hard not to think about Richard Nixon. But I've known plenty of people that I've gotten that look from. We may need the sound up a little bit. A lot of my life decisions were rebellious. Yeah, informed against something. The town that I grew up in was very conservative. Your whole world can be very, very small. You hear that okay? I was not aware growing up that everybody didn't go to the country club, that everybody wasn't white, that everybody, wasn't just like me. What I had to let go of was, number one, the social disapproval of bourgeois society, which I took care of by moving to a working class area. And the other thing was to live cheap. So those two things made it possible to do what I wanted to do. And that was very important to me. I don't think I ever could have been an artist if I had not moved here and worked that way, because I needed to just feel like I was where nobody could see me. Welcome to my humble studio. This is where I have a great time all day, every day, doing stuff. This is still wood heat, just very basic. All of the work that I make starts off as a little play object. Maquettes, that's a French word for model, and then I have a way of flattening this out into a shop drawing with the front view, top view, side view, and then I can enlarge that and make things in wood or other materials. I like to even have a little scene like this that I can set up and just encounter it every day. It's like dollhouse stuff, only for me the dollhouse is an office. It's kind of a corporate everyman, I guess I'd say. My imagining of the corporate world, what it would be like. He's a believer in the world of profits, increasing stockholder value. I like that swagger and looking up like that towards the bright future that awaits us in the next quarter. I think he's got sort of a rodent-like aspect to him, or that's the way he looks to me. I guess I'm suspicious and doubtful. I've tried to look at my motivation for these things. I think some of it is probably revenge against my father. Some of it is having the last word. As far as his and my relationship was concerned, he was definitely the CEO. He always told me, I don't want to hear any back talk from you, and I think that a lot of my art is back talk from me. It's me being a smart aleck. But you know, if that's where you got to go to get some juju, that's where you go to get it. We are headed to the town of Lawndale. My friend and colleague David Caldwell lives there. I make the aesthetic and artistic decisions, and he's very good with working with me to realize the products and effects that I want him to achieve.
So here he is.
Yeah.
There's the head. There's one arm.
The work proceeds in 3 parts, and David's main work is in the middle. When I get it started, things are very fluid in the drawing and clay modeling stage. David does the engineering, putting the wood together, doing the joinery, and then when I get it back from David, it becomes fluid again. It's all kind of up for grabs. I may make some decisions that I had not anticipated. It's like focusing in on the very end, reduce it down to the final fight and wait. My nightmare would be for the alarm clock to go off at 5:30 a.m. and I'd drag myself out of bed. Probably I'd forget to get dressed and go to work on the floor. I would be doing some kind of tedious sort of work that I would have to crunch numbers. The time would just tick very slowly. Tick, tick, tick. I got it okay over here. And there would be people watching my every move. Horrible meal in the office cafeteria or something, slog through the afternoon, shuffle off to bed early and get up and do it over again. Just feel dead.
I know where he's coming from. Yeah, I spent 7 years suit and tie working in the corporate world and was delighted to get out of it.
This is not me. This is not what I do. That is an illusion.
Cool.
I feel like, you know, sometimes I'm talking and part of my brain is saying, what are you saying, Bob? Does what you're saying make any sense at all? Do you know what you're talking about? I'm not this disembodied, disconnected artist over here that's living this pure life, and these guys are all money-grubbing, bottom line, seeing profiteers. It's, you know, I'm kidding myself if I think that the world is a lot more complicated than that. Everybody, I think, that looks at these things always, including me, thinks it's somebody else. And I think the truth is that we tend to put the things that we don't want to admit about ourselves, we project it onto someone else. It's a matter of having a smile and a shoe shine, just like it was for Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. He said that, you know, you get up in the morning and you get out there and you just do the best you can do. I hope you can convince people to believe in your ideas. And I think with an artist, it's no different. You know, when I think about my life, I'm 66. You know, I've lived most of it. Every day I get to challenge myself, get up at my leisure and very slowly craft out these satirical sculptures about the life that I am so glad I'm not living. Not have to go be somebody. You know, I'm trying to learn Russian now. just because that seems rebellious in a delightful way to me. To have this and to have that is just, I just can't get any better. I'm a happy man. Thank you. Well, Business as Usual is the name of my show. Every time I do a show, it's called Business as Usual because it doesn't change much. This is a etching by Peter Bruegel, who lived in the 1500s. He was a Dutch Renaissance artist. And this is what I like to use as an illustration for my sense of business as usual. This one, he did many things. This one is a part of a series called The Seven Deadly Sins, and this one is avarice. So you can see the lady in the middle here counting her shekels, all these gold pieces which are being examined by these creatures that are part animal, part human. It takes a while to kind of take it in, but there are lots of things going on. And I saw a graffiti in New York once that said, "Everything, everywhere, all the time." And I think that would be a good subtitle for this. The human world that we live in is everything, everywhere, all the time. I think a naive, I'm a child of the 60s, and once upon a time there was a musical called Hair that was about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, when peace would rule the planets and love would guide the stars. And that we would reach this wonderful state. This is the way it seemed maybe in 1967 or 68 to a 20-year-old. That we would reach this wonderful time that it would just be peace and love, and we would, war would be over, and everything would be wonderful. But that heaven or this utopia was always imagined as this static state where all of the bad stuff would just go away. And this vision is everything, everywhere, all the time, where it's not like that. That it's, and Darwin, the world that he described as the natural world, is a world where there are conflicting interests. And all of these interests are always fighting each other. We live in a world where there's ISIS doing beheadings and murdering people, or the stuff in Israel where the Palestinians and the Jewish people are fighting against each other. We live in a world where there's ISIS, but then there's Doctors Without Borders, people with absolutely no self-interest at all, risking their lives to help African children, to help the people that are struggling with Ebola. So we've got this incredible altruism and then this terrible self-interest. That's all part of our world. So the world that I think of as business as usual is this world where there's always this struggle, like this arms race between the various sides of people will do one thing, and then the opposite side will take over and outdo them, and then they will be outdone. But I think it's a much more mature way of looking at the world that we humans live in, to see that it's a constant struggle. And there's a constant struggle, say, in Bruegel's picture here, between the people these people are all trying to get things. and that is the world that we live in, and that, to me, is what business as usual is. It's never going to change. So I make little clay maquettes, and I love to set them up, as you saw in the video, to be this Bruegel-like world. Bruegel loved these grotesque, this interaction between these grotesque creatures and human beings, and I, in my own way, have got some of these grotesqueries going on, like this guy over here, and this guy here, that all become characters in my world that is the world of business and politics, people trying to gain the upper hand and outdo each other and hoodwink each other. I guess maybe I dwell on the negative side a little bit. And as was alluded to in the video, I've got a few personal axes to grind, like with my dad, who was a banker and was partly just the 50s. He was remote and authoritarian. So I have part of my art, I don't want it to be just about me personally, but they always say for artists, especially novelists, that you have to start with what's close to home. And so I try to use my relationship with my father as a place to go to that I can make what I'm saying at least genuine to me. So a lot of times I draw on things that I remember as a child, and then try to feed on that as a basis. And despite my disclaimer, I do try to make it relevant to things that I see going on in the world. But I don't want to be preachy. So for me, that's what I love about art, is that art really does, especially my art, encourages ambiguity and ambivalence. That I would rather be able, through my art, to raise the possibilities of looking at the world through lots of different perspectives. And I think that's the great thing about art, is that it does, like there's not one meaning, that you can see it this way or you can see it that way. But I don't want to lose the humanity that I'm not like trying to be shaking my finger at people that I think are bad or putting myself on the good side, whatever. It's very ambiguous, and I'd rather leave it that way than to proselytize. I don't like it when people proselytize to me, and I don't want to do it to you or to anybody else. In the show in Richmond, I showed my maquettes, and I use them as ways to help me make objects. They're small clay studies, so I can figure out what the object's going to look like, and then I'll show you my process in a minute. I'm able to scale these up and actually make pieces. But since you're familiar with the works here, the man on the ladder in the show here, this is a head that is the model for his head. And then I've got another sculpture, another one of these, that is the model for the whole figure. These are fired clay. You might recognize this guy right here, some people. This one is called Leading Man. The eyes are carved onto a block that is like a drawer, and you can pull the drawer out and turn it around the other way, and the other set of eyes are on the other side. Whoops, on the other side. So depending on the way that the owner wishes to display it, it can be done either way. This was called The Edge. This is called Swan Dive. This belongs to the Sidney and Francis Lewis collection in Richmond, Virginia. And hopefully will belong to the Virginia Museum of Art someday. This This belongs to the Columbia Museum of Art in South Carolina. This was called Caitlin. That's Martin. And then this was a grouping called Chorus, which I did in about 2008. But the first one here, that's what I was working on when 9/11 happened. So it seems that whatever the latest headline is, that's what people will see these things as having to do with for a while. And then the headline goes away and other connections come up. So this could be seen as people sinking in their subprime mortgages that they're unable to make their payments. Or people of fundamentalist belief see it as people, I'm not sure exactly. I was told it was an orulation, which was a word that I was not familiar with, but I think it has to do with praising the Lord. That was not my intention, but I was very happy that that the person who was telling me about it was able to incorporate it into their world and their belief system. This piece is called Cover Up, and it's in the collection of the Mint Museum in Charlotte. There are four. This is about this high. It's quite heavy. 4 figures, one of which is a woman. And I made this around the time, I think something had happened at Hewlett-Packard around 2008, and there was some kind of cover-up, so that was in the news. For any of you film buffs that might be out there that know the Russian film, the battleship Potemkin, where I actually lifted the image from was the soldiers that mutiny on the battleship. The Tsar's Navy rounds them all up, and they put a sail over them, and they're going to shoot them. So I just transferred from the sailors to business people. This one is called No Brainer. And the person that bought it actually puts magazines in it. It's quite large, so it sits next to a chair, and they just use it like put magazines so that they're like a magazine rack. And he has a befuddled expression. This piece was projected on a building in Charlotte during the Democratic Convention a few years ago. So you have to look for a second, but those are the staircases of the building. So that was quite large. And it's a still from an animation. This was a photograph of Deskman, which you have seen in the video and you'll see again. This was a photograph of the maquette for Deskman. This is another piece that Martin, who was doing that, posed for, and this also belongs to the Mint Museum, but was the lead object in an auction at Penland School of Crafts, which is about 50 miles from where I live. These pieces are carved from green poplar wood. So the logs, the crack was there before I started carving. But the pieces that have cracks in them, I try to use the crack as part of the piece. So I try to incorporate it into the aesthetic of the piece. The Japanese have a concept called wabi-sabi, which is the beauty of imperfections. So I try to use that crack almost as if it were a wound, and I've played into the vent in the back of his coat with the crack. This piece was called Una. So I often do people that are falling or that are undergoing some kind of balance problems. I think this was called Al. Here's a close-up. And that was John. He also appears in several places in here. This was modeled on my best friend in the 2nd grade, who's probably never worn a suit and tie in his life. This is the show in Richmond that just closed. It's my friend John again. Does anybody recognize that quote on the card? So on my show, I doctored up some punch cards for hourly workers, and the quote is a translation of Arbeit macht frei, which was what was on the sign over Auschwitz. And since this doesn't bear any relation to anything that actually happens in the real world, much less any appropriateness to anything that might have to do with anything around here, I won't comment any further on it. But there's a fair amount of irony in that. So I had the people that viewed the show punch in a card. So you took your card out, wrote your name on it, punched the time in, and then when you were when you were viewing the show, then you punched your card as you came out again. And so you were very poorly compensated monetarily for viewing the show. And this is the show at the Visual Arts Center of Richmond. As you entered, there was this big hand here that has a signet ring on it that says VIP. That was Victor Price Iverson, I believe. That must have been his initials. And the hand is tapping as though he were waiting for you. The name of the piece is called Waiter. So it's kind of like the shaker here at Crystal Bridges is not really a shaker like the religious sect. It's more of a shaker like that. So this is not a waiter that you would encounter in a restaurant. This is more of the waiter that you would encounter if your boss was waiting on you and you were late for work. These guys, which as you can see are in the gallery had 3 spaces. So there's a back room back there. The maquettes that I showed you earlier are in this room over here around the corner, which was devoted more to my process. And then most of the pieces in the show were in this central room. The back room, which we'll get to in a minute, was kind of like the inner sanctum in the back. And the head on the safe is around the corner back there. So the waiter was quite large, maybe about this big, and there's a motor that makes the hand tap. The ring is actually gilded, gold leaf on the ring. These guys are called quorum, and they are 5 heads that I made I'm interested in exploring some other materials besides wood. Wood is the main thing I do, but I'd like to branch out, not stop doing wood, but to do other materials, so I've got a little broader spectrum of in my vocabulary than just that one material. So I made this head out of terracotta and fired it, and then had a mold made at a foundry, and it's cast in urethane resin, and there's a light inside the resin. So these 5 heads are called quorum, and a quorum is the fewest possible number of a group that have to be present for a committee or something to conduct business. Or a quorum also means like the in crowd. So these 5 heads are positioned, and then they're all kind of networked together. As you can see, they're all operating on the same wavelength. And they are positioned on the wall so that you have to look up at them. A lot of my people are a lot of my figures, my characters, are a lot of what I play with when you actually encounter them are their power relations in relation to the viewer, in relation to you. If they're a lot bigger than you are, it tends to make you feel kind of small, like you're a child, or like you lose power in relation to them. Or if they're up higher than you, they gain power. If sometimes one of the pieces, the man with the club that we'll see later on, is smaller than life, even though he's standing up on a box, I saw him as having that little man, kind of the cockalorum Napoleon complex that we often see of a lot of times people that are very aggressive or small of stature. So sometimes I'll have things that might look intimidating, but they're small, which makes them look ridiculous, or things that might look nice, but they're big, which makes them seem intimidating. So that's kind of one of the things I like to play with. I don't know what's going to be. The piece over here is called Trumpeter. And as you could hear, nope, sorry. So there's the VIP hand. Sorry, I'll get back to the trumpeter in a minute. This one was called Slow Drip. And he's sort of a talking head. And I was thinking about talking heads that are very intent on spreading fear and hatred. So he has this golden liquid that's flowing into his ear, filling him with nastiness, which he is spreading around. His mouth is working. The stool is actually controlled by a computer program that randomizes the motion. But what the effect I wanted to have was though he was turning around, addressing various people that are in his audience, that are in the room with him. He might be a boss, or he might be somebody that's a talking head on the media that is spreading unpleasantness and his vitriol. Actually, the liquid is yellow, is water with yellow food coloring. So don't worry. But I put it in, I found a nice IV stand and put it in I think it was a coloscopy bag or something. Pretty nasty. Yeah, so he's, but I like also the similarity between, get my buttons right, the similarity between the bottom of the office chair and the IV stand. It's almost like they were gears that they would turn together, like the wheels of commerce. Here's the desk man, who is quite large. He's a lot bigger than life. Actually, I'm going to say this. Some of you people, Randy Schull gave me a friend that is also known to a couple of guests here. Were in New York and got this little man that was made out of foam rubber. He was in a fetal position. He didn't have a suit on, but it was a little thing you could put in your pocket and squeeze. So that was the idea for this piece, and I just put the guy in a suit and put him on his desk, and he's just having a very hard time pondering what it all means. So if I were in this world, I think this is the position that I would be in. I'd be squirming around on my desk. This is called Fountain. And Fountain was also the name of Marcel Duchamp's urinal that he turned upside down and put in the Armory show, I believe in 1916, that outraged everybody. But here, this is a fountain that is possibly meant as maybe having something to do with economics, with certain economic theories of the way that wealth might trickle down. So here we have the head up here on the top, and he's, as he rotates back and forth and the mouth opens and closes, you can hear the sound of a crowd coming from a speaker inside of his head. So we have I tried to put together the one head and then a multitude of voices that are inside his head. Old safes often had the name of the safe company right there on the door, like Diebold or Mosler. And so I wanted to have some kind of power symbol on the safe. And I tried various things, and then I finally started Googling power symbols. And so when I Googled power symbols, this is what I got. Do you recognize where that comes from? It's the power symbol, like to turn your computer on and off. But it also, if you know Ai Weiwei's work, he has famous pictures of the Forbidden City and the White House with his hand giving the middle finger. And I sort of thought that was what that power symbol looked like, a middle finger right there. And then we have the safe and the yellow liquid trickling down into a bucket here. And your nice artificial plant over here. She's called Senior Partner. And even though this doesn't bear much relation to my lovely wife, she is always my model of choice. So I have lots of pictures of her from the many years in which she has been kind enough to model and allow me to distort her in many ways. But I will say that Jane, for 20 years, was an 8th grade English teacher, and she probably looked like this to a lot of her students. And occasionally when I got out of line, she looks like that to me too. Yeah, don't mess with Jane. This piece is called Stain. And the elements, as you can see, are kind of feet of corporate persons down here. And it has to do with certain energy practices that can do this to your water table. And I have put my own voice coordinated with the pump handle going up and down as though as though the pump were breathing its last gasp. But we all know that natural gas is just so clean, and we just try not to think about how they get it, because it just makes our world a better place. This guy called Clubman was inspired by a lovely evening at a collector's home in a medium-sized city near me, which will remain nameless, in which I was sitting with my host and two of his friends, and we were in their garden, and the subject turned. Several of the gentlemen talked about carrying pistols with them all the time, and where they carried their pistols. Do you take your pistol to the library with you? Do you take your pistol to the bar with you? Because, you know, we have to have our pistols. We have to be protected. So rather than portraying this gentleman with a pistol, I thought that I would give him a nice club. And you can see the grip on his club. This also could be like a lawn jockey in a gated community. But I think always being in rooms with people that are carrying pistols always makes me feel safer. This piece is called The Ascendancy of Desire. And we have our hand here on the top. This is rotated by a small motor, and he's got his VIP ring on. And we have his feet here with his corporate shoes, and then we have the photograph. This is a light box from a dollar bill, in which we have the pyramid. I'm told that corporations often move money up the pyramid. A notable exception, or one notable exception, being Henry Ford, who was smart enough to figure out that if he paid his workers well, they would be able to afford his products. So, in a way, he was smart to make sure that the people below him had enough money to make him even richer. And it was also beneficial for the people that worked for him. It was a virtuous cycle. Often people forget that these days. This piece is I called it Ladderman, but the people that commissioned it, who were African American, call it Journey. And as a matter of fact, they gave me permission to do this piece. It was often when people approach me about commissions, I always listen to what people have to say, and we have a conversation, but I think it's important as the artist for the final idea to come from me. So what I like to do is listen to what the patron, to listen to their concerns and what they're interested in, and make sure that they're aware of the sort of work that I do, and then I make a proposal back to them and say, how about this? Or how about that? And sometimes they'll say, no, that isn't what I want. So we talk further, and then I make another proposal, and that process seems to work pretty well. I think it's really important that there be a conversation. And a lot of times, sometimes the people have what I think are really terrible ideas, and I try to be diplomatic about it. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But a lot of times people have great ideas and things that I never would have come up with on my own, or in this case, that I would never have proposed this. The gentleman was a banker, and that was his story, that he had come from pretty modest background and had retired very much at the top of the ladder. And the fact that I was able to work with them gave me the opportunity to make a piece that I feel really good about it, and I think they feel really good about it. And so it was a win-win situation. They did ask me to make a portrait of the person who had commissioned it, and we settled. I was able to come back to them and say, let me make it somebody like you, not you in particular, but someone, a more generalized person that had, who had also enacted this story of America being a place where you could raise yourself up. And I feel really privileged that they trusted me with their story. And they gave this to each other for an anniversary present, and had a very nice party at their house in Atlanta, and in which they, I just made me feel great and very honored to have been trusted with this. And then they were kind enough to loan it for the show here at Crystal Bridges. This piece is called a capitulating device. Woo. I don't want to keep you guys too late. This is in case you have to eat crow and you don't want to have to do it personally, you can have your butler bring this out. It's a butler's tray, and just plug it into the wall and the white flag will wave, and you can surrender and save face at the same time. Here's the trumpeter, who is the person that I don't want to be like by preaching. My son recorded the voice, so it's kind of like, it reminds people of Charlie Brown's parents. But this is a person that is very important. And you can see the back there. He's also kind of hollow from the back. And here's the shaker that is here, and you don't want to buy a used car from this guy. I'm going to go really fast through this because I'm getting near the end of my time period. This was a piece that was commissioned by the North Carolina Museum of Art. It's called Vertigo. I have to get the wrinkles off of photographs of myself. And it was a hot day in the summertime, and I didn't want to bother to put on shoes, and I figured nobody would ever see this picture, so that's why he's shoeless. There's the maquette. He's got extra long arms because I wanted him to look like he was falling towards you. Here, I'm cutting him out. You can see all the pieces that are cut. And here, that's the block that the torso is going to be cut from. David, my helper, works on the body at his studio. I was working on the head and hands in my studio. There I am standing next to it. We have to fit all the pieces together. There's David when he had a mustache. But you see how the logs all have to be cut and fit very tediously. And I hold the clay maquette up and slide over it to make sure that the angles are right. This all these joints. I was standing on a ladder to do this, sliding over the maquette, seeing the way the arms were, make sure the angles were right, and then this all has to be trimmed down and fit together, and it's mortise and tenon together. You can see how the head and hands go on, and feet. Now I've hung him up in my studio in exactly the same height and position that it'll be at in the museum, so I can correct what needs to be. I stand below it and look up at it and correct. And this is I use my face on this one because all my friends were saying, "Well, Bob, when are you going to do yourself?" So I did it once, and I don't think I'll do it again. And I use a water-based paint and wax for the surface. There he is. He barely fit in the truck. There he is at the museum. And there he is. And I've heard that weddings have been conducted under this guy. Can you imagine? I think I'd want to take my wedding vows a little more seriously than that, but you know these young people. So this is what I'm working on right now. This is the model for it. I'm making a big figure out of paper mache backed up with fiberglass. And you can't see the rope very well, but the one that I just showed you weighed about 400 pounds and took a lot of cables to hold it up. So I want to make another, this is going to be 8 feet tall. I wanted to make it weigh about 10 pounds. So this guy is hollow, hollow from the back. And I like the way that looks a lot. You can see the string. I kind of was thinking, Jane and I bounce ideas back and forth, and I said it's a rock and paper, and she said, oh yeah, like rock, paper, scissors. So there may be some big wooden scissors in there, carved out of beautiful burl walnut or something. I don't know whether I'm going to do that or not. It may just be the rock and the paper. So the obligatory pictures. And I had a moment of, Richard Nixon helps me every day. Do you remember when Richard Nixon got on the helicopter, you know, in his moment of triumph after he'd resigned, and he had his hands up like that, and he had his suit buttoned? So the suit wrinkling up just is so important to me. You know, I tried it first like that, and that just doesn't get it. So Tricky Dick's helping me. Tricky Dick and my father, between the two of them, they just give me a boost every day. So this one I have made out of clay. First, I've used chicken wire, plaster-soaked rags, and then water-based clay on top of that, and made this huge 8-foot figure, which is really fun. Clay is so easy compared to carving wood, let me tell you. Because you mess it up, you can fix it. So there he is. You can see the chicken wire and everything. And it's going to be open on the back. And now, then I'm making a mold, and the mold is plaster-soaked burlap with the reinforcement is electrical conduit. So it looks sort of like the alien there. And then I made a frame for the mold so that when the mold is off and upside down, you can see the frame is on the other side. And then we'll put the paper in here and then fiberglass to back it up. And that is basically my show, except for the upper hand, which I will just, don't despair. It's slow-paced, but this is the last thing you'll have to endure, and then you'll be free to go. This is a game my father used to play with me. And thank you.